Hi there, my name is Toby, and today I want to continue with my Aether Physics series. And this is another very important one. This explains the very fundamental principles of Aether Physics. It's a very different science, totally different. And what I want to talk about today is the 0 point. And I talk about it all the time as the point of inertia. Point of inertia. But modern physics talks about the 0 point field, and they talk about this, the 0 point. So what is it? What is it? Well, really, this is ether physics. So when modern science is talking about 0 point, they're really talking about ether, but they just don't want to say, or they can't quite get there. And it's a universal principle of this physics. You see, the physics is based on the idea that there is only one thing called ether. One pure fluid field. Only one thing that the whole universe is made up of. And this ether is metaphysical. It's not physical. Unmanifest potential energy. Infinite potential energy. But unmanifest, not physical. It's consciousness. It's life. It's mathematics. All things that are real but not physical. Again, big thing to wrap your head around. And then from this field, a disturbance is created. That disturbance is electromagnetism. So there's only one thing, there's only one manifest world, one manifest energy in this world. That is electromagnetism. But that simply is a disturbance of the ether. So it's still just ether. It's like the ether divides into electricity and magnetism, and this allows a dynamic. That's the yin and the yang, electricity and magnetism. So all the ancient philosophies talked about this. In the Tao, it's the Wu Qi. It's called the empty void, the nothingness, the darkness, but they call it the pregnant void. So it's full of potential. It's pregnant, full of limitless potential energy, but it's a void. It's nothing, emptiness. And from this, the yin and the yang emerge. Electricity and magnetism, a dynamic. And that dynamic is a disturbance, a vibration, a frequency. And everything is this disturbance, this frequency. Everything manifest is that, a disturbance of the ether. But because the ether is unmanifest, it's nowhere. It's everywhere and nowhere. So for it to come into manifestation, it's going to appear from a point. So this is the 0 point, or I call it the point of inertia, because inertia means that. Inertia means rest, emptiness, darkness. But the real meaning of inertia also means infinite potentiality, infinite potential energy. So point of inertia, the 0 point, and there's also sometimes called counter space, the point of counter space. So Eric Dollard is another very serious scientist, engineer, who talks all about electromagnetism and ether. He calls it counter space, counter to space. In other words, space is disappearing into a point. And this is an infinitesimal point. Got to understand this. Infinitesimal, it's collapsing into nothing. So the 0 point, the point of inertia, the point of counter space, that is really metaphysics. Okay, you've got to get your head around this. Metaphysics. Because it's infinitesimal, it cannot be physical. It's physical disappearing into metaphysical. Counter space. And this point, because of that, it's sort of abstract. It's always moving. You can't put your finger on a point of inertia. Well, you can, but it's always moving, always changing according to the movements, the disturbance of the ether going on. Points of inertia are going to be moving around, appearing and disappearing all over the place. The easiest way I can explain this to you is like the weather. In the weather, what is the weather? The whole universe, the ether works like the weather. Clouds. You've got high pressure in the weather and low pressure in the weather. And the air moves from high pressure down to low pressure. But in the middle of high pressure, there's going to be a point. Inside the high pressure, there's going to be a point somewhere where the highest pressure is there. It's going to be a localized point. So you've got an area of high pressure, but in that area somewhere, there's going to be a point of highest pressure. So that would be a point of inertia. A tiny point where it's localized. It's the locus. The locus of pressure or high pressure is that 0 point. And the same in the low pressure. Somewhere there's an area of low pressure, but somewhere in that area there's going to be a point of minimum low pressure. A locus, a focal point, a 0 point, where there's low pressure. And the point for high pressure is going to be moving towards the point of low pressure. Now, I'm going to have to draw diagrams. This one I have to. So let's look at it. So you've got some clouds here, like this. And there's another cloud here. We'll call it clouds, a point of high pressure. So somewhere in here, there's a highest point of pressure. Let's say it's about here. And then here's low pressure, but somewhere in here, there's a low point of pressure. But this cloud is always moving. There's always stuff changing. So if it goes like that, this point of high pressure is going to move to there. Same with this one, always moving. So saying point of low pressure is going to move to there. These are the 0 points. But quite literally, this point of high pressure is wanting to go to this point of low pressure. Because this is a disturbance of the ether. This is a dynamic created. So the ether is rest, inertia. It moves out of rest, out of balance. But as it goes out of balance, it wants to spring back to balance. High pressure must go together with low pressure, and then you've got balance again. So this high pressure, high potential, if it meets this low pressure, it will balance out, cancel out. Now this is lightning, okay? This is how lightning works. It's all electromagnetism. Even this air pressure is still an electrostatic, electromagnetic effect. But we can see it most dramatic in lightning. So these are clouds now. Now these are clouds building up. So in all these clouds here building up electrostatic energy, somewhere in these clouds there's going to be a point of maximum high pressure electrostatic energy. And it's going to build up so much. Once it builds up to a certain level, it's got enough power that it will ionize the air or turn the air into a plasma. There's so much energy. So when there's enough energy built up here that it can ionize or turn the air into a plasma, I don't know what you call that, plasmify the air. Now it's going to go somewhere. Where's it going to go? Well, somewhere else. There's another area over here, another point of low pressure, low electrostatic pressure. So another set of clouds here, somewhere there's going to be a point. So when this lightning appears, it's got to find a point. It's got to find a point that will balance it out. Another point. There's one over here. So the lightning is going to be drawn to this point. It will emerge in all directions, but because there is a pathway to another point, what happens is there's a field created. These 2 points connect. These 2 points connect, and it will ionize the air or create a plasma in such a way that a bolt of lightning will appear from here and disappear to there. Essentially, it's moving between 2 0 points. 2 0 points. Points of inertia. One is a point where energy is created. There's so much now, the electrostatics appears, and it's enough electrostatics that will plasmify the air. And it has to go somewhere. Well, it finds an equal point that balances out. But it's not that simple. If you know lightning, it doesn't just go like that. It goes all over the place. You see, it goes all over the place. When you see lightning, it's like this. It goes off like this. It goes there. It goes there. It goes there. It goes all over the place. It goes in a dendric pattern, like this, like a tree. And that's why plants grow like that as well. They're balancing like lightning. It's all the same. When a plant grows up, it's reaching out to points of inertia, spreading out, looking for points of energy. So how does this work? Dendric pattern. Well, let's build it up. Look, here we've got the cloud, point of inertia building up. It's got so much energy it wants to release. It releases. Now over here, there's another point, a small one. So it'll jump to there. Boof. But that's not quite enough. It's not quite enough. So it releases some to this point, but it's still got more left. There's another point over here, a different point. Then it will jump to this one. And then there's another point over here. We'll jump to that one. But there's another one over here. Some can go to this one. So it's gradually discharging itself at these different points, depending on the power of these points, the localized area of pressure. So here is massive high pressure. Here's an area of sort of low pressure, so it can jump to that, but it's not enough. There's another low pressure, another low pressure, another low pressure, and then finally one more over here. Oh, it's finished. That's the end. So you get dendric pattern, different ones, another one over here. You get a dendritic pattern, and of course you've got the ground. Finally, the last bit might go to the ground. So that's why you can be struck by lightning and survive it. Because when the lightning starts here, it's massive. That would just vaporize you. If that one hit you, poof, you vanish. But some is discharged here, some is discharged here, some is discharged here, some is discharged here, some is discharged here. Now, just a little bit left, and you could be here, and you only get a little bit of lightning goes down, and you can survive that. See, that's how it works. It's points of inertia, 0 points. But you see, these are all moving. It's always changing. You see, look, this point has built up, so it jumps to this point, because there's one there. But it jumps to this point. Where's the next point? We don't even know. There's points moving all around. Points always moving. Pressure is always changing, moving. So the moment it's that one, at that particular moment, where's the next point? The next point, oh, there's one there. Jumps to that one. Some is released. But not enough. It goes to this one. Somewhere else a point is moving. Jumps to that one. Oh, there's another one there. Jumps a little bit. Jumps to that one. So it would divide as well. If there's two, it might split. You see, that's how the dendritic pattern is created. Now, so these are points of inertia, 0 point, and I'm explaining it in terms of electrostatics. Now let's explain it in terms of gravity. Now again, I've talked about this on the channel multiple times. If you listen to my whole series on ether physics and magical science, I go into great detail why electricity, electromagnetism and gravity are the same, or rather magnetism is the same as gravity. And the way I describe it simply, magnetism is polarized gravity, and gravity then is depolarized magnetism. They're both the same, two different effects, because they're two different states of matter. Polarized matter and depolarized matter. Polarized matter is a proton, depolarized matter is a neutron, and everything builds up from there. So if you've got something like this built up as a magnet here, built of polarized matter, it will have a magnetic field. If you've got something like this here, just inert, is built up of neutral matter, you've just got gravity. There's no actual polarization. But the force, magnetism and gravity, is the same. It's essentially energy is created and it wants to go back to a point again. They both work in the same way. They're pulled in towards a point. Magnetism is pulling you into a point. Gravity is pulling you into a point. But they're the same force. They do the same thing, but they're slightly different. Polarity means you've got a direct way into the point. A pathway is opened, plus and a minus. Gravity means it's sealed off. There's no way into the point. So there's no direct pathway in. It's always in, but because it's sealed off, it's softer. Let me try and explain it to you. Let's say you've got a ball. Here's a ball, a physical object. So this is going to have gravity, its mass, and it's going to have a center of gravity. A center of gravity. Now in this magnet, there's a center of the field, same thing, a point of inertia where the field comes out. But now center of gravity is the same thing. In this magnet, it's probably the same. It's probably exactly the same point because it's a lump of matter and it's got a magnetic field and the whole matter is polarized. But actually, there's still two separate points. Okay, I'll come to that. But let's just talk about gravity. So there's a center of gravity. Now that makes sense because all the mass around it is being pulled inwards. Gravity is being pulled inwards to a point. And this ball is fixed, so the center of gravity is fixed. But if you change the shape of this ball, maybe put a lump here, put a lump there like that. Now, the moment this lump appears, the center of gravity moves. It's going to move to there. You see, this center of gravity is metaphysical. It's always moving. It's a theoretical point. It's a theoretical point where the gravity is collapsing in towards it. But it's a real point. It's a real thing. Gravity is a force pulling in towards a point. So where is that point? Well, that point is always changing depending on what is happening to the matter around it. Now, let's look at this again in another way. Now, this is where it's going to get different now. Okay, modern science will accept that. Now, listen here. We've got one ball here. Let's just say, nice and simple. There's a ball. It's got a center of gravity. Over here, there's another one. That's got a center of gravity. Now, we know these 2 points are going to attract towards each other as well. So they've got a force pulling them together. So we say they're attracting each other, towards each other. Actually, it's not the case. It always works like this. Everything is going towards a point. So there's a center of gravity in this one, a center of gravity in this one, but look at it this way. Imagine this was one big ball. One big ball, including these two small balls. So where is the center of gravity in this big ball? Well, it's going to be about, I'd say this one is a little bit bigger. It's going to be about here. It's going to be about here. So in fact, this one is not being pulled to this one. What's happening is all the matter in this one is being pulled towards the point of inertia, the 0 point. They're both being pulled towards this point. They're both coming towards the point between them. Do you see? They both want to disappear. And this is the balance point. This is the balance point where this matter can balance with this matter, and if they were both collapsed to a point, it would vanish. So this point is the 0 point, point of inertia, the center of gravity. The center of gravity. Now, the trouble is, imagine these things were moving. That one's moving, and that one's moving. They're moving around, so as they move close, this point then is also moving around. This point is always moving around. It's a metaphysical point. Now, what happens if we get a third one? There's a third one. Let's say there's an even bigger one over here. Even bigger one over here. Well, same principle. Now we've got to imagine there's one big ball, including these three balls. So where's the point where this matter can collapse and disappear of these three things? Well, it's going to be about here. So now this one can go to here. This one can go to here. And this one can go to here. So that is the 0 point. That is the point of inertia, the center of gravity of these three objects. And they're all trying to go to this point. So it's not that that one's connected to that one's connected to that one's pulled to that one. They are, but when all three get together, essentially, you see these two will also pull together, but now this one is here. So there's going to be a pull to that one, pull to that one, but they're also pulled to this one. So that combination of these three forces creates this point. This point is created. And so on, another one comes, another small one. Well, now it's going to move a little bit over here. A little bit over here because of this one. But then if you look at these two are going to have one over here. These two are going to have one as well. Just like lightning, different points always appearing. This is a point of low pressure. Low gravitational pressure point. Right? And here in the actual mass is a higher gravitational pressure point. Higher gravitational pressure point going to the middle. Gravity is going to this one. But here is a point of low gravitational pressure. So gravity is moving from high pressure to low pressure. But this point is always moving. Do you see? The 0 point counter space is the point where matter, mass, is trying to disappear back to ether. You see, these two objects they want to go together because the energy is trapped. The energy is trying to get together, balance itself, poof, and disappear back to ether. It can't. They'll get to here, and that's it. Because the nature of substances, once you've got an atom, it's trapped energy. The energy is trapped. It can't go any further. If I want to make these disappear, I have to smash them, break the atoms, break up all the atoms, and break up all the neutrons and protons. Everything then will turn back to energy, and that energy then can collapse and disappear. But when it's now matter, it can't collapse just by itself. It's stabilized. It requires input of high energy, really smash these together so hard. If I could smash these together hard enough that every single proton and neutron breaks up, then it will vanish. Energy would be released, but that energy is released and it's going off to points of inertia all around. Like lightning. Again, that's a spark. I create a spark. That's like lightning is created. Where does it go? It disappears off to inertia. See, when you light a fire, you create a spark. The spark jumps to the fire. It's trying to release itself. Disappear back to inertia. But you are creating, again, a point of inertia. There's a center of gravity between these 2 points. center of point of inertia, 0 point, hit them together, that's going to the 0 point and creating energy. You're creating a 0 point. You're creating a 0 point when you create a spark, exactly like lightning. And this works together with the magnetic field. So the difference between the center of gravity, so here's a gravitational body. Now this is a neutron, center of gravity, and a magnetic field. So now let's have a polarized particle. So again, you've got the center of the field, point of inertia, but the field comes out like this. The field comes out like this. In other words, there's a line. There's a line goes up and goes down. There's a line. So here there's two components. This is the electrostatic component, electricity. This is the magnetic component. So now the electrostatic component, the dynamic, the potential, the voltage, or the polarity is dominant. This one, the polarity is still in there. It's still in there. But the magnetic field aspect, the magnetic field is dominant, sealed over. So you can't see this polarity. To all intents and purposes, this is just now a center of gravity. It's still a center of magnetism. It's still a center of magnetism, but the line, this is called the line of inertia, is closed up. Here the line of inertia is opened up, which means, remember, in two bodies, two gravitational pulls, like this. Whoops. Let's do it over here, sorry. So if you've got two lumps of matter, like this, remember, the center of gravity is moving towards the midpoint, the point of low pressure. If you've got two magnets, so let's say there's another one here with a polarity, what they are attracted together because this is a point of one of them is going out, one of them is going in. So this is a point of high pressure relative to this one, which is a point of low pressure. So this is the North Pole will be attracted to the South Pole. High pressure attracted to low pressure. But because this pathway is opened up, now the two things will get stuck together. The two things will get stuck together because there's a way in to the point. Here they can only get this far. They can't pass the sealed off field. Here they can get closer. And again, it works in the same way. Let me do it another way. If you look at two magnets, if you have a magnet here, so here's a magnet. Let's say it's going this way. All right, here's a magnet. Here's another magnet. Let's go back to this pen. Here's a magnet here. So that's got the North Pole. Or the plus, it's the same thing. Here's another magnet here. So that's got the South Pole, the minus. Same thing. So you think they're attracted to each other. But again, this will be a high pressure magnetic force because it's coming out. This will be a low pressure magnetic force. So those two want to come together. But between the two, so we know that one's going to jump to this one. But again, there's going to be a point between the two. There's going to be a point between the two where they extinguish. See, this one is actually going to be pulled to this one. This one is going to be pulled to this one. But really, they're pulled to the midpoint. They're both going to this point here. It's not that that one's going to that one, that one's going to that one. They're both going to the midpoint. Because it always works like this. In other words, this magnet has got a point of inertia in the middle. This magnet has got a point of inertia in the middle. But when two magnets are coming together, there's a new point of inertia. Here's a new point of inertia created. There's a new point. And they're both being drawn to this point of inertia because this is the balance point between these two fields. Do you see? But likewise, if I move this magnet over here, move it over there, now the point of inertia has moved. This new point of inertia has moved. It's always moving. It's the point of low pressure, the balance point, where the field will cancel itself out. And if I bring a third magnet in here, another one, well, now we've got another thing. These three are going to somehow be connected. There'll be a third point here. But as they're drawn to this point, you know, something else will happen. Because it's magnetic, it's more powerful. These two will probably turn in. These two might link together to become a magnet. And then this one will turn in and come to this one. And then they'll link together. So you end up, we'll have three magnets like this. But again, how does it work? It works like lightning. As the movements happen, various pressure points are changing. So according to these two, they chase that one, link. Then there's a third one, these come together, link. So this will have more dynamic movement than kinetics, because the magnetic field, it creates movement as well. So this won't be quite the same as electrostatics, but it's a similar effect. This is an effect where magnetism is dominant. In the clouds, it's an effect where electrostatics is dominant. And in gravity, it's an effect where gravity is dominant. In other words, gravity is the center of gravity is the point of inertia for depolarized matter. The point of inertia, again in a magnet, is literally called that. The point of inertia in a magnet is the 0 point in polarized matter. Now, let's look at something more complex. Let's look at a planet Earth. Now, let's look first of all at gravity. So here's the planet Earth. Now, we're standing on the top of planet Earth here. And we know planet Earth, all right, the center of gravity is in the middle. That's where gravity is all being pulled inwards. But of course, it's not quite in the middle. The Earth has got lumps on it. It's lumpy. And the Earth is always moving and changing. The oceans are moving. Things are happening. So the center of gravity is actually going to be moving all around. It's always moving. It's never in the same place. Center of gravity is going to be moving about. Like me, in my body, I've got a center of gravity in the belly below the navel. But of course, it depends on my movement. If I stick one arm out like this, my center of gravity has moved. Bring my arm in, my center of gravity moves. This is an abstract point. It's a metaphysical point. The point at which gravity is being drawn to. Or the force is the point, the 0 point where the force has minimum pressure can disappear. It's the point of inertia. But it's not a fixed thing. It's always moving, always changing. Because energy is always moving, changing. So for us, the point of the center of gravity of the Earth is pulling us here, but there's also the moon. The moon has got gravity as well. So in fact, the center of gravity for us, because of the moon here, is actually still going to be a little bit up here. If the moon's over here, center of gravity is going to be more over here. It's always moving according to everything that's happening. But Earth is more complicated still because the Earth is magnetic. So in the now, before I go there, let's look at this. So the next question is this: what happens if I go down underground? So if I go down underground, so there's a tunnel here, and it goes down to the center of the Earth like this. So if I could stand here, halfway down the Earth, where's the center of gravity now? Well, you think, well, it's still in the middle somewhere. Well, it's not, because now I've got matter above me, as well as matter below me. So I've got to look here below me, look at the matter, there'll be a point of central point, but there's matter all around me as well. There's some above me, there's some to here, there's some to there. So the center of gravity now, in fact, is going to move up a bit, because I've got matter above me. So the center of gravity is relative as well to where you are. It's relative. It's also relative. You have to analyze it according to the situation. It's a tricky thing. This is metaphysics. It's metaphysics, but it's really physics. And then the question is, what happens if you go to the middle of the Earth? So I'm slap bang in the middle of the Earth. Let's make it a bit better now. So if I'm in the middle of the Earth, I've got matter all around me, and that matter is pulling in towards the center. So according to that, the midpoint here, the point of inertia, means there's no gravity, it's disappeared. But not quite, because what is gravity? Gravity is a collection of atoms. It comes from depolarized matter, trillions and trillions of atoms. It's an effect of lumps of atoms. So they're all around me now. So in fact, for me, gravity is pulling me away. It's actually pulling me backwards. Gravity will be pulling me away in all directions. There'll be centers of gravity, there'll be points of inertia all around, like this, because matter is all around me in a sphere. So really what I have is more like a sphere of inertia around me. So inside the Earth, I'll be pulled, I'll be stretched. I won't be pulled inwards, it'd be like I'm stretched apart. I'll be floating, but being pulled by gravity, stretched apart. That's what would happen to you in the center of the Earth. You'd be stretched apart. And if you put your middle of your center of gravity in the middle of the center of gravity of the Earth and you were floating there, you'd be evenly stretched apart like that. So if you can understand that, how it works, it's a complicated thing. But now, the planet Earth is also magnetic. It's also magnetic. Now I've told you, I've said this, magnetism and gravity are the same thing. So is the center of gravity and the center of magnetism the same point? No, it's not. I mean, in an atom, it is. The point of inertia inside an atom is exactly the same point as the center of gravity. It's exactly the same thing. Again, because it's a fundamental, or the neutron and the proton are fundamental particles, so that is the creation of the force itself. The middle is both gravity and magnetism, the same point. But once you've got large bodies of matter like this, complex matter, there's so many different things going on. So we know the Earth has got a north and a south pole. But it's because there are areas, let's just say there's areas of magnetized matter here. So now we've got a polarity here. Maybe there's another lump of magnetized metal here going this way. There's something else over here, some more little magnets. But then you've got areas where it's inert matter, no magnetism. No magnetism. And then you've got, of course, there's fluids in the Earth. You know, and some of these fluids have got moving magnetism. You know, everything is moving. What's in the center of the Earth, you know, molten matter, plasma. It could also be solid metal. It could be a diamond in the middle. I like that. I thought a giant diamond in the middle of the Earth because of the pressure. So you could have a diamond here, a giant one. Nobody really knows. Nobody knows. You have to go into spirit, create an energy body, and travel to the middle of the planet Earth and see what you find. You have to go and have a look. But of course you can't physically go and have a look. So that means all these lumps of inert matter will have their own center of gravity. So all these things, you look at these three, the center of gravity of inert matter will be about here. But then you've got some magnetic materials. They're magnetic materials. They're going to have a point of inertia, a center of magnetism about here. But it's more complicated than that because these magnetic materials are also, of course, gravitational. You see, magnetic materials, a magnet, okay, listen carefully, a magnet, and here's an inert matter, gravity, magnetism, they're the same. Now, it appears that magnetism has no effect on this. I mean, it does, very, very slight, but you can't notice it. But of course, this is a magnet, but it's still got gravity. So a magnet has both gravity and magnetism, but inert matter seems to only have gravity, no magnetism. How is it possible? Well, because, again, it's still the same force. The magnet has still got a point of inertia, but that point of inertia is still the center of gravity. It's the same point. It still will have a gravitational force based on the mass, the atoms, the creation of the atoms. So this magnetic material will still have a center of gravity, which will still connect to the center of gravity. So the center of gravity will also be affected by these magnetic materials, so maybe it's here. But the magnetic force and the gravitational force, in other words, the polarized force and the depolarized force are still moving because there is polarized material and there's depolarized material. Do you see? So the center of gravity is moving around and the center of magnetism is moving around. Now, occasionally they might become exactly the same point, but it's very unlikely because there's so much movement going on in the planet. There's liquid, everything moving, you know, geological events, everything moves. And you've got electricity in the planet, electricity passing through the planet. Electricity passing through the planet is also going to affect the magnetism, keep changing it. And you've got things like pole shifts. If the pole shifts, it means all this fluid moves so much that it shifts around. It shifts around, again, because magnetic material is still affected by gravitational material. But gravitational material is still affected by magnetic material, just very, very slight. You hardly notice it. You see, like I said, this magnet, you can still see the gravitational force, but this inert matter, you can't see the magnetic force, but it is there. There's a magnetism coming out. When I move this inert magnet past it, it will still affect this, very slightly. It will still affect it. So slight, it's, you barely measure it. But if I put it at the South Pole, it still affect it. Put it at the North Pole, it's going to affect it. Now, people say that crystals are not magnetic. But you can sometimes feel a very slight force between a magnet and a crystal. But you have to feel it. You have to sense it. So slight. So slight. You can sometimes feel it. In other words, everything is still magnetic. And if you get a powerful enough magnet, like an MRI scanner, how does it work? Your body is not all magnetic. It magnetizes everything. Magnetizes everything. And then it polarizes everything and you can look at it. So everything, if magnetic material will still affect a gravitational material. It just requires a lot more power. So they're both the same force. And it's interacting in different ways. And when you have it, like I said, on a fundamental particle, a neutron, there's the center of gravity, but that is also the center of the magnetic field, but the magnetic field is just going round and round and round and round. A proton is the center of gravity, but it's also the center of the field. Oops. But the field is also coming out now, coming out and going in. So it's got a dynamic to it. And all this means is there's a direct line to the point. There's a way into the point. There's a way into the point. This way, there's no way into the point. It stops at the edge. This way, it can go in. So this way, you've got a spiral, a vortex going in, like this. It creates more power. This way has not got a vortex coming in. It's got a unidirectional power going in. It's all going in, softer. It's going softer, all in. This one is going more powerfully in. Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference? Now, a neutron will become a proton. You see, they are interchangeable. You knock the neutron, it becomes a proton. That's how it works. This is balanced. This is out of balance. So that's what I'm saying. Magnetic depolarized matter can become polarized matter. You can knock it out of balance and polarize it. But this is a very complex thing. Very complex thing. What you're talking about in ether physics is the point of inertia, the 0 point. It's always moving. It's pressure mediation. Think of it like the weather. That's the easiest way. Energy is moving. All sorts of energy. Well, electromagnetic energy, but all sorts of manifestations. Here it's highly dense. It's solidified. It's locked. It's crystallized. Now it's got another effect. Gravity, or throw it. But even that is still electromagnetic, so I talk about it. And then you've got more, gases, liquids, they're moving. But the same thing, high pressure to low pressure. This is high pressure, the earth is high pressure, they're trying to move together. To disappear, because that's how the ether works. Point of nothing, 0 point, energy comes out, a disturbance. That's light. Light emerges from a point. It emerges from an atom. But it wants to go back to a point. It's disappearing again. Point of inertia is the point where energy is created and energy is destroyed. Sometimes a point of inertia is more created, and then it looks for one which is more of a destroy. Sometimes you get one that's doing both. Like this, in a magnet, it's doing both. It's being created and destroyed continuously. So now it's a free energy machine. Energy is coming out, going in all the time. And sometimes, like lightning, it appears, and once it's appeared, it's released, it's gone. But where does it go? It goes off to another one. Another one goes, it disappears, gone. And once it's disappeared, where's that point? It's gone. It's a metaphysical point, a point of low pressure, a locus in the field, a focal point in the field where energy, the disturbance happens. Like friction is a disturbance. I smash them together, there's a localized point. At that point is where the spark is created. Because the fields interact with such power, high pressure is created between the fields. Such high pressure, electrostatics is created, you've got a spark. It's quite literally lightning. Lightning and friction is the same thing. Field interactions. Everything is just field interactions. And once you've got matter, you've got two different things. Polarized and depolarized. Just like you've got electricity and magnetism. Two different things, but they're one and the same thing. The yin and the yang comes from the wu-chi, the emptiness. And in matter, same thing, yin and the yang, polarized, depolarized. You always got that. It's two halves of the same coin. Energy comes out, but energy must go back in again. Creation, destruction. Energy, entropy. All the same. So I hope this made sense. Please do check out the whole series. I'll go into this in more detail. But this is, I hope, explains how the 0 point works, the point of inertia, what it is, and the fact that it is metaphysics. Metaphysics. It's a point of infinitesimal. It's infinitesimal. Counter space. It's gone out of space. Counter to space. So thank you so much for listening, and thanks for your time, and I hope to see you in any of these other videos here.